You automatically have been given that sin. We didn't ask for it. But the other man who came millennia later, Jesus, in order to get his salvation, you would have to become a Christian and go through baptism. Now the question is, I didn't ask for sin, I was given it. I'm not asking for salvation, but if you think I'm a sinner, why not give salvation to me without conversion? So what is the difference, basically? Let me just see how much you know about what's happening. What is the difference between a Hindu in a vulnerable state getting converted and a Hindu in a vulnerable state not getting converted? Christianity is not just replacement of one deity with another or one doctrine with another. Christianity demands a lot more than that. Christianity demands exclusivism. And civilizationally, we have never believed in exclusivist ideology. Exclusivism gives rise to insecurity, which gives rise to violence. सभी को नमस्कार और बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आप यहाँ पे आए. There was a moment in my life जब मैं सच में ये मानती थी पूरी निष्ठा के साथ कि मेरे पूर्वज नरक में जल रहे हैं. And it is this exact thought, this exact fear that was weaponized by the Christian church. जब fear को weapon बनाया जाए वो तो ultimate strategy है क्योंकि the emotion that every human being is actually afraid of is fear. और जब ये indoctrinate कर दो किसी में कि आप नरक जा रहे हो, so that's the biggest fear of even losing family or losing property, losing health. That's the biggest fear. Why? Because human beings inherently have operated with just one purpose in life, moksha, salvation, whatever you call it. That has been the ultimate goal of human life, and our scriptures have said that. अलग अलग cultures के scriptures ने भी यही बात कही है. So when you say that your ending will be in hell and will be eternal, I would say that's the biggest fear a human being can face. And that is exactly the fear the church weaponized. और मेरी इसी सोच के कारण मैं seminary में गई. Seminary is a place where Christian education is taught. और वेस्ट में जब मैं सेमिनरी गई तो वहाँ पे तब तक मैं 25 साल क्रिश्चियनिटी प्रैक्टिस कर चुकी थी. So after I went to the seminary, for the very first time, I was looking at my faith through the lens of academics, through the lens of reason, logic, common sense. And that is when I realized that everything that I was taught about Christianity through the faith lens is not true. In fact, it is false. As a Christian, I have only looked at my faith through the faith lens. I have interpreted the Bible through the lens of the pastor that was preaching to me and never really cared to read other Christian literature apart from the Bible. For 25 years, the only Christian literature I ever read was the Bible. And as lay Christians, especially in India, maybe the world over, if you're not a student of Christianity, you're not doing Christian studies, the only literature you would have access to or even have inclination to read is just the Bible. Apart from the Bible, a Christian thinks that there's no need to read any other literature, and you are taught like that. All the critical literature, all the literature that is that comes from the critical lens is in some way to defame Christianity, and that is the work of the Satan. I mean, in short, there's so much of nuance to it, but in short, it is said that it's the work of Satan, it's the work of the enemy. The enemy could be critical scholarship, the enemy could be other religions. So everything that stands against Christianity is of the enemy. So I never read any literature apart from Bible, but for the first time in the seminary, I was given to read the interpretations of the Bible, the textbooks of theologians, the critical literature, arguments for and against Christianity. When I say Christianity, the aspects are for the historicity of Jesus, against the historicity of Jesus, for the historicity of for the eyewitness, for gospel accounts. जैसे in the Bible, in the New Testament, there are 4 books that talk about the biography of Jesus, like Jesus's biographies. Now, the critical scholarship says they are not eyewitness accounts, and on the Christian side, it says they are eyewitness accounts. So, when I am saying that I got to read about the literature on all of this, that's what I mean. Historicity of Jesus, eyewitness or not of the Gospels. So, when I began reading all those things, the very seminary that was supposed to strengthen my faith actually stole my faith. That's how I would put it. The seminary stole my faith. And a lot of people have a question. I've shared this on several platforms that the seminary that was supposed to strengthen my faith and make me a pastor ended up leaving me disillusioned about everything Christian. How did that happen? Like I already mentioned, that critical literature is never a part of a Christian's upbringing. So, when you scrutinize Christianity in light of logic, in light of history, in light of basic common sense, it doesn't stand the test of truth. For example, the concept of original sin. Everybody is aware of original sin, concept of original sin. So, where did it begin? It began in the Garden of Eden. The story goes something like this. God created the world. I'm telling it in a very short manner. God created the world in 6 days. He rested on the 7th day. God needed rest. And 6 days, he created a beautiful creation, because at the end of each day, the Bible says the creation, it was good. He created ABC things. It was good. Now, it was a beautiful creation. He put man and woman created from man's rib, and beautiful flora and fauna, marine life, birds in life in the sky, everything was beautiful. And then he puts in the middle of the garden a tree, and a fruit-bearing tree, and he points to Adam and Eve. He points to the tree and tells Adam and Eve that you can eat everything from this garden except that fruit from that tree. If you eat of that fruit, you will die. This is the story. Now, then comes the serpent. Probably, I mean, this is not mentioned in the Bible. I'm just filling in just to bring continuity to the story. Probably, as people with free will just created, like they didn't pay attention to the tree until then, probably. They start looking at it. Curiosity killed the cat. They started looking at it, and when they were looking at it with longing to probably try it, but they were afraid, probably, the serpent sees them looking at the tree longingly, and he says, okay, go ahead and have it. Then Eve hesitates. Finally, the serpent convinces Eve to eat the fruit, and as soon as Eve eats it, God jumps out of his hiding place and he pronounces the punishment. He says, get out of my garden. He curses the woman to bear the pains of labor. Okay, just note this carefully. Bear the pains of labor. He curses the man to toil in the sun for the rest of his life, and he curses the serpent to crawl on its belly and eat dust for the rest of his life. What this means is, working hard in the Christian parlance, working hard is a consequence of sin. Motherhood is a consequence of sin. Okay, gems to pick up from this story. And the serpent, of course, used to maybe walk on legs, 4 legs, or we don't know how many legs. But after sin, it started crawling. And probably it was a talking serpent because it had a conversation with Eve. And later we don't have talking serpents anymore. Now, this is the story. Just let's park this thought for a minute. Let's weigh this against common sense and morality that Christianity claims of. There's a beautiful home. Okay, let's say it's a wonderful, palatial, Ambani kind of home. And I mean, Garden of Eden cannot be anything less than that in today's world, right? Now, in that home is a beautiful kitchen and a grand kitchen. In the middle of the kitchen is a island counter. On that is kept a candy jar, a large, beautiful looking, colorful candy jar. There is a mother in that house and a 2-year-old and a nanny. Now, the mother brings the 2-year-old into the kitchen and says, look, you can have anything from this kitchen, any food from this kitchen, but do not touch that candy jar and you cannot have that candy from that jar. And if you eat it, I'll kick you out of the house. That's what it says. She says. So this boy who never paid attention to that candy jar before that day suddenly goes into the kitchen every now and then and sees it. And the nanny comes and says, do you want to have one? He says, yes. But he is afraid because he doesn't know what kicking out is apparently. He didn't understand the action and consequence, the dynamic. But he knew that his mother shouted at him and it's something bad to do. So he hesitates. The nanny says, no, she's not going to do anything. You're her child after all. Just go ahead and eat it. So the kid eats it. Then the mother jumps out suddenly soon after that and she says, get out of my house. Now, I'll pause here and just let you reflect on it. What does that make the mother? To be very polite to the mother, she's a monster, right? So, now let's go to the Garden of Eden story. If God did not want man to eat, he would have removed it, right? He would not even have placed it. And he's an all-knowing God. He should have known what Adam and Eve would do. And if separation from God, that is what they interpreted death as. You will die. Now, Adam and Eve, I can equate them to actually infancy. But I'm just, again, I love to be polite to Christianity, and so I did 2-year-old. Adam and Eve's state of mind, mental ability is no more than 2 years old, I would put it. They have no precedence to what death is, but God uses it as if there has been death before that. Okay? And he says, you will die. That's actually a lie because it didn't kill Adam and Eve. So how does Christianity interpret it as? Later on, death is equal to separation from God. So that's a different argument. We can go on and on, back and forth with the Christian community. But they were not killed. They didn't die. And Satan says, well, he's not going to kill you. Just like the nanny said that she's not going to kick you out. He won't let you die. So nature's first lie was told by God, and nature's first truth was told by Satan. Now, they don't have any precedence for death, but still God uses the word death as if to scare them. That is how sin entered the world. And then the Bible goes on to say that through one man sin entered the world, through another man salvation came to mankind. Now, everybody born after Adam and Eve are supposed to be sinners. Why? Because God decided that sin will be imputed to Adam's generations automatically. You don't have to become an Adamanity or you don't have to follow Adamism to inherit sin. You automatically have been given that sin. We didn't ask for it. But the other man who came millennia later, Jesus, in order to get his salvation, you would have to become a Christian and go through baptism. Now the question is, I didn't ask for sin, I was given it. I'm not asking for salvation, but if you think I'm a sinner, why not give salvation to me without conversion? To get that man died. Like Christianity says, he died for all mankind. Shouldn't salvation then be applied to me automatically? Why do I have to change my civilizational identity? Why do I have to have conflict with my relationships? Why do I have to claim exclusivity? Us and them. Why do I have to go through these binaries, evil binaries, right? Saved, damned, going to hell, going to heaven, them, us, heathens, worshippers of God. Why do I have to go through all this when salvation could automatically be applied if God wants me to go to heaven? That's the biggest red flag, right? Now Christianity has no answers to this. Okay. Sin, I haven't asked, but I have been given. I've been forced from Adam just by virtue of being born after the creation story. And salvation is not given to me. So, these are all the questions that failed to have answers. And for 25 years, I did not look at them. For the first time, I started asking these questions only because in the seminary, the fear around asking questions was removed. Okay. So, as long as I was a Christian, I could not ask questions. I should not ask questions. In the seminary, everybody was asking questions. My theologians, theological textbooks that I was reading, they asked a question and they answered. They went on to answer it. So then I realized that asking questions is not wrong. I won't be put in hell just for asking questions. I remember another anecdote. My daughter came back from Sunday school when she was about 7 years old. And she said, Mom, my teacher told me the Garden of Eden story. And I said, yeah, what about it? I was a cutter Christian at this point. And she said, my teacher said that the serpent spoke to Eve. So why are snakes not talking anymore? That was her question. And then she said, so what happened to the serpent? Okay, Adam and Eve died, the Bible says that. But the Bible never said, my teacher never said that the serpent died. So is there a 6,000-year-old snake somewhere on this earth? So I told her, you cannot ask these questions. Satan is tempting you to ask these questions. Just keep quiet. She mocks me on this, quotes me on this to this day, of course. So, but that's what happens when you start questioning. It removes those layers of indoctrination and makes you see with clarity. Martin Luther, the Protestant founder of Protestant Christianity in 15th century, 16th century, said something very interesting. And I did not come across this quote until I was in the seminary. And it says, he said, to be a Christian, you have to gouge the eye of reason, gouge out the eye of reason, pluck the eye of reason. Matlab, you cannot look at the things about Christianity through reason. And today, Christian theologians want to reconcile faith and reason. Whereas their own guru, Martin Luther, said that my reason and faith don't go together. So, for the first time in the seminary, I started asking questions, and I think unraveling of your faith begins with a question. I want to talk a little bit about the historicity of Jesus. So, from the very century that Jesus is said to have walked this earth, there have been questions about his historicity in the very century that he was there, supposed to have lived. Or should I put it as from the very century that his story began to be popularized. the myth began to be popularized. There have been questions about the nature of his divinity. Is he really God? Is he son of God? Is he just a man? Is he a madman? Is he a deluded person? Is he a prophet? So there are any number of Jesus theories who Jesus could be if he really existed. Okay. Now that whole argument gave rise to two parties, historicists and mythicists. Jesus historicists and Jesus mythicists. Now, which side of this do I stand? I have taken a path called the Jesus skepticist. I'll tell you why. Jesus historicists say that he was a historical person and he is God. That's one group. There's another group within historicists which says Jesus is a historical person, but he is not God. He never claimed to be God in the New Testament. Then who is he? And then there are so many, I've gone into great detail in my book. There are several scholars, Marcus Borg and any number of these scholars who gave different ideas of who Jesus is according to them. Jesus skeptics say there is no way of Jesus being a real person. Jesus skeptics like me say that there is no way of proving whether he existed for real or he did not for real. Because the arguments that historicists put together don't stand the test of, history, logic, nothing. They don't stand because virgin birth we know defies science. Resurrection defies science. And there are so many promises that Jesus is supposed to have made that didn't fulfill, like the second coming. I'll come to that in a minute. And the historicists don't hold water. Now, mythicists are limited in how much they can prove. It's impossible to prove the negative, or it's challenging to prove the negative. We all know that, right? For example, if you ask me, prove that there is no white elephant in this room, I cannot begin to even frame my arguments to argue that there is no white elephant in this room. What I can do though is, if you claim that there is a white elephant in this room and show some proofs, present an argument for its presence in this room, I will examine those arguments and then I will debunk those arguments based on the available data, right? Same thing happened for Jesus. Mythicists took the arguments of historicists and said that this doesn't hold true. This doesn't hold true. So they did that. They are limited in what they can do. Historicists, their arguments don't hold water. So I take a middle path and say that there is no way of saying for sure he existed. There's no way of saying he didn't exist. And I don't care. I just don't care whether Jesus exists or not, because my fight is a civilizational fight. This has got nothing to do with whether Jesus exists or not, whether the Bible is true or not, whether the doctrines hold any relevance in our today's, in the Indian society, Hindu society or not. I just don't care. But I will say that you both come to a consensus, come to an agreement that Jesus exists, Jesus doesn't exist. I mean, come to an agreement. Does he or does he not? And then go knock on Hindu doors saying that here is a Jesus, here is a savior who died for you, and this will do good if you start believing in him. Until then, just leave us alone. So, Christians ask me, they comment, they say that a comment had come today also, long comment saying that I have never argued with scholars on their side. I just don't care. I don't care. I don't want to waste my time debating with you. I have gone over the arguments you have produced. It's all over the internet. It's all over the textbooks. I have gone through those arguments from an academic viewpoint. I don't need to spend any time in debating with you because we just don't care. We have a better philosophy. We have a better message. And they say that, oh, ours is a 2000-year, well-evidenced, well-documented message. But 2000 years, right? Just 2000 years. And who are you fighting with? At least 10,000 plus, which we have documents, and even more, far behind. So this is what I would want you also to tell. When somebody says you are not, oh, you are just sitting in among people that don't know anything about Christianity, and you are just discussing among yourselves and debunking Christianity, that doesn't make any, that's not even valid. Just say this, that we don't care what your doctrines say, we don't care what your arguments are, we are happy with our message, just leave us alone, that's all we ask. So why do we have to fight conversions? Right? Because this is no more about religion. For them also, it was never about religion. It was all about dominionism, the takeover of demography and religion. That is what it has always been about. That is what it was about when Constantine made Christianity the official religion of Rome. Constantine, even after making it the official religion, he never became a Christian. To his dying day, he was a sun worshipper, even though Christianity claims otherwise. There is literature to that effect. There is church biographers who wrote it about him, especially Eusebius, his own biographer. So the whole point about Christianity was numbers, dominionism, and that is what we are still facing. It is about civilization. It is about trying to fight back, reclaim your civilizational identity and all that. So it's not about religion. Therefore, there is need to fight conversion of Hindus today. We all agree. I don't have to talk much about that. Now, coming to this book, Unbaptized, it is 10 years in the making. It took me even to write the very first word I wrote to the time it was sent for publishing. It took 10 years, and lot of thought even before that 10 years went into it. I have said my story on different platforms in English, Hindi and Telugu. Now, if you ask me why did I have to write the book, my story is out there in the open. Now, I have said it, but platforms like this or even video chats, podcasts and all cannot tell the entire story coherently. And there were a lot of questions from people. How can a seminary, which was supposed to, that's classic question that I have always faced. So I had to go into great detail. Lot of technical stuff. When I say technical, lot of academic stuff is also related to that in answering that question. So I had to lay it all down. And I finished writing it about 2 years ago, but I held on to it. I was not sure if I wanted, once I saw it, I was not sure if I wanted to publish it because that's such a deeply personal story. It was not only my story, but in my family, there are 7 conversion stories altogether. My parents and my 4 siblings and me. So these 7 stories were somebody else. The 6 stories are somebody else's. And 2 of those stories, the people are not there to defend themselves. So that's so much more responsibility on me to say it the way it is, without not lying, but without manipulating or without distorting the facts. So that was so much of burden on me. And I didn't know if I had the right to put their story out for public scrutiny. But if you ask me what made me finally publish it, I saw that the conversion scene, the demography change in India was attending to that, addressing that was far bigger than, the personal reasons, like reason to hold on seemed trivial to me compared to reason to publish and put it out in public. So it's very raw. And when you read it, I have already said it in the book that I'm, of course, the Hindu side of people will be very, very sensitive to whatever has been said and without judgment. I can't promise the same thing from, I mean, I can't even ask the Christian side for a promise like that. But in telling the story, actually telling the story has humbled me a lot. The experiences that my parents faced, the what goes on inside a transitioning family, a converting family. I went into great detail about it in the book. It's a psychological trauma. It's not about religion. It is not doctrine. It is not Jesus or his salvation. It is trauma. That is what is uh, weaponized along with fear. So trauma is weaponized. Health trauma, emotional trauma, financial trauma, social trauma. These are the factors, right? To think that only a rural, tribal, marginalized communities are converted, targeted, would be a lie. You know, we're not well informed. I would say my family is the best example. So we were not socially disadvantaged. We were not economically so backward. It was an upper middle class family, huge family though. Well read. My father was very well traveled and well read, and very devoted, conservative Hindu family. But they went through a rough patch in life. Now that is also not uncommon. Every one of us go through rough patches in our lives, but not every Hindu gets converted, right? So what is the difference basically? Let me just see how much you know about what's happening. What is the difference between a Hindu in a vulnerable state getting converted and a Hindu in a vulnerable state not getting converted?
नेबर्स ने कौन है जो आपकी तरफ ध्यान रख रहे हैं और आपके संपर्क में आके मैनिपुलेट कह लीजिए या कुछ भी इस तरह से कह लीजिए कि आपके सॉफ्ट जो आपके फीलिंग्स हैं उनको टारगेट कर कहीं पर हैं आप कहीं बड़ी प्रॉब्लम फेस कर रही है लेकिन अगर वहां पे कोई ऐसी फैमिली नहीं है क्रिश्चियन फैमिली नहीं है
You're so right, yes.
लेकिन जहां आप के कहीं आस पड़ोस में या कहीं पर भी आप ऐसी प्रॉब्लम में हैं तो उनके लिए बहुत इजी उनको एक मंच मिल जाता है आप लोगों किसी भी ऐसे व्यक्ति को टारगेट करने के लिए उनको क्योंकि जब इंसान लो अपने उसमें होता है तो इन्फ्लुएंस में आ जाता है तो ये डिपेंड करता है कि आपके
बगल में कौन है आपके बगल में कौन है सो अनफॉर्चुनेटली
शत्रु बोध यहीं से शायद शुरू होता है
creating a sense of community when you are in distress and isolated. That's true. So it depends on who your neighbor is, because I would say the evangelists have a knack of smelling pain in Hindu families. They know that. They know when a Hindu family is going through a rough patch and they will pounce on you. And that's exactly what happened in my parents' case. Our neighbor, we were in a non-Telugu state. We are a Telugu family, non-Telugu state of Odisha, Bhubaneswar. No relatives close by, no friends. Of course, we had a social community, but you know how clubs work, right? In club, you know everybody, but you don't know anybody. It's like that. So they were part of a Telugu club. Very socially active parents. But our neighbor was a Christian who immediately got a whiff of what was going on in our life. A good Samaritan, a smelling Samaritan. So that's what happened, and he jumped into our. We found him right in the middle of our family. I won't go into the story because that is the crux of the story. That's what that's how the story starts. And we got introduced to Christianity. If you look at our the different motivations for all the 7 of us, I mean, 2 parents, both of them the same reason, but the other 6, they're all different. My parents were liberal Hindus. All Hindu parents are liberal, right? No imposition of religion. My parents were equally liberal Christians, which actually makes them very bad Christians. They were bad Christians. They did not impose religion on us children, which is why our dates of baptism or getting converted are very different. Each of us converted at different times for different reasons. If you look at my personal reasons for converting to Christianity is, again, of course, indoctrination. And I was told as a 13-year-old that I have a gift of healing. All I have to do is just follow Jesus in the waters of baptism. Yeah, I'm throwing some jargon here, Christian jargon here.
Who told?
This person who was in the neighbor who introduced us to Christianity, he was a Tamil speaking Christian living away from his family in Tamil Nadu in Orissa. And he was our neighbor. His wife was a prophetess. She had the gift of prophecy, which is a message from God. She gets the message from God, and her husband had the gift of interpretation. And the gift of prophecy is not revealed in the language that you and I understand. There's something called speaking in tongues in Christianity in one denomination, which is the Pentecostal denomination. And I went into Pentecostal denomination. That is the most active evangelical denomination in India. Our demography changes because of that, because it's highly dramatic, highly charged prayer sessions and all that, and vulnerable people, okay, looking for quick solutions, they get drawn to that denomination of Christianity. And she told me so prophecy is spoken in a language that doesn't mean anything, but it's just holy language that's between God and the devotee. That's what they said. So she spoke in tongues, and he apparently understood that, and he interpreted it. And during these prophetic sessions, she told that I have a gift of healing. I would get a gift of healing provided I read the Bible every day. In fact, I should become a Christian first. I should follow Jesus. I should read the Bible and go to church. Now, for a 13-year-old, when you say that you are going to get power and all you have to do is it's very simple. What do I lose by reading the Bible every day? Whether I understand it or not. What do I lose by going to church every Sunday? Right? And for a kid who is actually seeing that her parents are going through a rough time, so if I get the power, probably I'll be able to change the situation of my family, right? I was told that I will have that power to make a difference to my family, to get the gift of healing. So I wanted that power. I become a Christian, and the next 25 years, I evolve into a fanatic Christian in the Pentecostal setup. But my shift in my faith came after my marriage, when I moved to another locality. And the church that I started going to was, I would say, it's a mega church. There are small churches, there are medium-sized churches, and this was a mega church, thousands of people in attendance every Sunday. And this church was it's called the Assemblies of God Church. Assemblies of God is a very strong denomination across the world. And the people in this church, we had Gujarati converts, we had Marwadi converts, we had Punjabi converts, Reddis, Chaudhries, and they came in Benz, Mercedes Benz, and they came in these SUVs and well dressed. So it was still Pentecostal. But the Pentecostal church I was used to, And this church, the difference between these two churches was modest Pentecostalism in white saris, no adornments. This was Pentecostalism in tuxedos. That was the difference. Great music, English music. That was Telugu church, Telugu music and all that. Everybody sat on the floors, and there was still so much of poverty within the church. But this was a rich church. We sat on chairs, and the pastor spoke from the pulpit in a suit. English, American English, accented English. And people wore flowing gowns, and it was very beautiful to look at. The music was fantastic. That's how Christianity won, by the way, through music. And youngsters, young people, get immediately drawn to it, which is why the rest of the other traditional churches in my city of Hyderabad had a complaint against this church that it was stealing their youth. So this church was fantastic. I loved it, and this is where I evolved further as a Christian to the point that I wanted to become a preacher, and I thought I didn't want to become a preacher like they become preachers in India. I actually wanted to go through the academic rigor, getting trained in the best seminaries in the world. So I went to a conservative seminary, but my reason to go to seminary is also a kind of interesting. I used to love the Old Testament. The Old Testament tells the story of mankind's beginnings, at least according to the Christian claim. So there were several races mentioned in it. Now, even as a cutter Christian, I never doubted the idea that Indian civilization is the world's ancient civilization, A. B is the wisdom that came out of India, the contributions that Indic civilization made to the world are tremendous. So these two things I never doubted, even as a Christian, and even though I was told otherwise, right? So to me, the all-knowing God could not have ignored the race like that. Why did he not mention it in the Old Testament? There is a fragment, I think one mention in the book of Esther. I'm putting this on record because Christians will come back and quote me when they watch this video. But the other races that were mentioned, there was more than just mention of that word. Their races were mentioned, their interaction with the Hebrew people were mentioned. Now, for India not to find a mention among those races in that part of the Bible, either God would have to hate India so much for it being devil worshippers, or I don't know how to interpret. I'm unable to interpret it correctly. So I thought I would have to go to the seminary because maybe these interpretations are told during Sunday school, which I missed. I came after the Sunday school age, which ends at 12 years of age. And probably I would have to go to a seminary to understand, to know how to interpret the Bible. This is one of the motivations for me to go to the seminary. But then, like I said in the beginning, that I had to save India from idol worshipping because India was damned to hell and I had to save it. So I ended up in the seminary. Now, if you actually look at the situation in the West, okay, we are, I see a lot of videos saying that Christianity is collapsing in the West, right? Would that make you happy? Christianity is, yes, it's collapsing. Churches are getting converted to either museums, theaters, depends on the size of the church, or even mosques. Islamists buy churches and convert them into mosques. That is true in the West. But is it a good thing for India? So the other perspective is it's being offloaded into countries like India. India is a breeding ground. You see all of a sudden there is increase in the in the number of Christians, number of conversions in India, like Punjab, Andhra. I mean, recently at Jaipur Dialogues, there were people from Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand saying that, oh, my village is 100% Christian. So it is being dumped in the global south, and more money is being pumped. Why? Because, see, I compare Christianity to Christianity doesn't die, it mutates. It just mutates, and that's how it spreads. And if you look from the 2000 years of history, every 500 years it goes through something called the great rummage sale. Matlab, there, the people do their yard sale, spring cleaning. Yeah, every 500 years Christianity goes through a spring cleaning. And it is true, if you look at it, each 500 years you look at it. Just 500 years ago, Protestantism, Christianity cleaned itself of Roman Catholicism, and Protestantism was born. There was no Protestantism before that. How many people knew the age of Protestantism? So until the first 1500 years of Christianity, it was only Catholicism, only one form of Christianity, that was Catholic Christianity. And it was only 500 years ago that Protestant Christianity was born. And today Protestants don't consider Catholics to be Christian. Now again, I root everything back to the God of Christianity. I don't blame Christians at all. My complaints are only to the Christian God. I ask, so if Protestants are saying that, well, Catholics are not Christians, they're not Christian enough, they are, Satan's, the Pope was compared to Satan, right? Antichrist. So what was God doing for 1500 years? Why did he allow a false message to be spread as Christianity? So the hospitals, whatever, the schools, hospitals, all of this were established by Catholics so far. So they did surveys. So were they doing surveys in the name of a false god? So why were they allowed to flourish, to thrive? So going back to the rummage sale, the spring cleaning, 500 years ago it was Protestantism. 500 years before that, in 1000, there was a schism between the Eastern Church and the Western Church. So if you go far back into that, there's another event. So every 500 years there is an event, and we are going through the fourth, I would say the third rummage sale of spring cleaning as we speak. So Christianity is not dead. It won't be dead. It can only be pushed back. It can only be pushed back. So I think everybody listening to this message, I would think the burden is on all of us. The responsibility, yes, the dharma is on everybody. But again, it is not a religion that we are fighting. It is not a belief that we fight. It is just the reclamation of our civilizational identity. That is what we are fighting for. And just to sum up this whole thing, what happens if, I've been asked this question, it's okay, right? I mean, India has absorbed so many religions. Why not Christianity? Right? Christianity is just another religion. You've given, room for every other faith. But Christianity is not just replacement of one deity with another or one doctrine with another. Christianity demands a lot more than that. Christianity demands exclusivism. And civilizationally, we have never believed in exclusivist ideology. Exclusivism gives rise to insecurity, which gives rise to violence. That's how I will put it. And and Christianity, there's also a quote which describes Christianity. It's all or nothing. I want it all, or I don't want anything at all. Of course, the second part, it's never demonstrated the second part, but I want it all is what Christianity says. and they are trying very hard. We are not. Forget about hard, we are not even trying. If the demography changes, what happens? We've seen it. Christianity is against progress. Christianity is against progress. Why? Because Christianity wants people poor. Christianity wants people uneducated. So Christianity is against progress. Christianity is against sharing the space with other things. It cannot coexist. It cannot coexist. And when I say that Christianity demands exclusivism and exclusivism leads to violence, where is it coming from? It's theology. And Christianity demands dominionism. Dominionism, which led to the doctrine of discovery. Anybody heard of doctrine of discovery? Right? So, doctrine of discovery was from the Pope, an order from the Pope to European monarchs, kings, saying that any land you see empty belongs to you, just go and seize it. It's called the doctrine of discovery. Came in the 15th century. What does it actually say? It says any land outside of that does not belong to Christians rightfully belongs to Christians. Why? Because God promised in Garden of Eden to Adam and Eve that the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, the animals of the land, the flora, fauna, everything in this creation is for man to use, abuse, extract, to dominion over, take over. So this dominionism, dominion theology we call it, this dominion theology gave rise to doctrine of discovery. Doctrine of discovery then is the beginning of colonialism and slavery. So is this a theology that should be allowed into India? A lay Christian may not be privy to this, this sinister agenda of the Christian church, but this is exactly why they are here. Colonialism is not just about grabbing land. Colonialism is about cultural erasure, civilizational erasure, which is why, where in the Bible does it say that women should not wear a bindi when they get converted to Christianity? So what were they doing by asking women to remove their bindi? It's cultural erasure, right? So Christian theology is not just about replacing Krishna or Shivji or Ramji with Jesus. It is dominion, it is exclusivism, it is a cultural erasure. So there is, I would think, a need for pushing this back. The idea about with this book is to lend the language to fight conversions on the ground. In your communities, ground doesn't mean you just have to go do activism. In your communities, in your school, college, kids' schools, colleges, in your jobs and all that. So you get the language to push back. So next time a Christian comes and says, you know what, you're an original sinner. I mean, only Jesus can save you from sin. You will have the language to counter. So the idea with this book is just that. And I also want to lend language to policymakers through this book, which is today Christians say that, oh, there are no forceful conversions. It's just a personal choice. It is not. Now, who defines what forceful means? What coercive means? Coercive is not putting a gun to your head and telling them to change into Christianity. That's not coercion. What happened to my parents, what happened to me is coercion. So the policymakers need to rephrase the definition of coercive. So that is my idea with this book. And finally, I would say the goal that I'm working with is Christianity Mukt Bharat, not Christian Mukt, Christianity Mukt. the kind of Christianity that is practiced today.